So, time to talk about one of the most divisive games I think that might have ever released. This'll be fun. Hey everyone, what is going on? MrWombat live and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm starting what might be a new mini-series where I'm going and playing a bunch of different PlayStation exclusive games that I never tried at the time because I never owned a PlayStation 3 or 4 and I only recently got my PS5. And since finishing my teaching placement, I've torn through a bunch of PlayStation games and I'm going to continue to do so. And I honestly want to talk about a good bunch of them. So today we are starting off with The Last of Us 2, but I also want to talk about Marvel Spider-Man, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Detroit Become Human, and there's other ones I haven't even played yet that I'd love to get to and no doubt talk about in the future. So if you'd like to see me do more videos, then please let me know. Leave a like on this video. I greatly appreciate it. But, like I said, today we're talking about The Last of Us Part 2, which, as I've said, I remember following this game when it launched and seeing the amount of mix of love and hate that it got. It was kind of surreal. I'd never seen a game get so much hatred from so many people as this one did. What I'd like to remind everyone watch this video, which I hopefully shouldn't need to do, is this is going to be my opinion. Please don't hate me for it. If you do, then... well, I can't stop you, but it's just a bit stupid to hate someone for their opinions, but whatever, that's by the by. But I'm going to be talking about why I really enjoyed the game. I'm going to be trying to defend it for people who may think it's a bit irredeemable, and if maybe one person goes away from this video thinking, you know what, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought, then I'll take that as a win in my books. But either way, I don't want to sit here and just defend it for the sake of it. I want to actually talk about what I liked and disliked about the game. So let's get into it. But as a prologue, I do want to talk a little bit briefly about The Last of Us Part 1 because I'm not doing a separate video for that because I don't really want to. The main reason for that being, having only just played it recently, I didn't love it. I did really enjoy it, but the gameplay is showing its age a little bit now, and I came out of it thinking this was really good, but the gameplay, like I said, is showing its age now. It does feel a bit stilted because it is from 2013, 2014. It still looked very good for a 2014 remaster, but the gameplay, I was like, yeah, this does feel like it's you know, it does feel like a PS3 era game. It doesn't control quite as well as it could. The stealth was good, but not amazing. There were certain mechanics that just didn't feel quite right. Things which definitely vastly improved in The Last of Us Part 2. The standout, obviously, is Joel and Ellie. They are great characters. I really love them both. I think apparently it's a hot take that I much prefer Ellie to Joel. Apparently a lot of people thought that was quite surprising when I said that on a Twitch live stream at one point, but Ellie is the standout character to me of the whole franchise. She is absolutely fantastic. I loved her in the first game. I adore her in the second one. But for me, for Joel, I liked him, and I really like Troy Baker. I think he's a really good actor, and not just because we share the same name. But Joel didn't grab me immediately. I think the problem was we started off with a really good introduction. I loved that opening scene with the outbreak. That was very well done. One of the best like opening outbreak scenes I've seen in anything, be it a game, a TV show, a film, whatever it might be. It was really well done, really well handled. But the time jump and then trying to get used to the new world, I don't feel like I got hooked completely on that. I didn't really like Tess that much. I didn't really understand all the backstory with those two. It felt like it was throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and just kind of expecting you to follow it. That might be me, though, being a bit smooth-brained. Probably was. But it took me until roughly the Henry and Sam section to really get on board with the game and want to keep playing it without stopping, because I kept doing it in bits before that and just wasn't really grabbing it completely, so that's just me. It definitely got better from the university section onwards, and I still left the game thinking it was really good, don't get me wrong, but I didn't adore it. You know what I mean? I just didn't adore it, and I feel like, you know, I wasn't as hooked on Joel as other people were. Still a good character, still an interesting character, and a great performance, but that's why I came out Last of Us 1 feeling a bit like, don't really know if I need to talk about this in too much detail, so there's your context there. But I then went into Last of Us 2, and for the first game, I knew the spoilers. I knew that Joel would go, spoilers, into the hospital and kill everybody and rescue Ellie to stop her from dying to make the vaccine. I knew that from the start, so that might have impacted my view of the game going into it, to be honest. And going into Last of Us Part 2, I knew the following things. Joel would be killed by Abby very early on in the game. I had an inkling, I think I'd heard that Jesse was going to get killed at some point. I remember there was someone called Jesse that might have died. I also knew that there was going to be a fight between Ellie and Abby. You would play as Abby for a good bit of the game, and at the end of it, no one would be killed. They'd meet up again, and no one would be killed again, and then Ellie would come home and Dina wouldn't be there. That was the stuff I knew going into the game. That's how much I knew. So obviously, I had my preconceptions. I'd seen videos at the time of people saying how bad the game is, and I watched certain YouTubers complain about it, and it's content I don't watch anymore, because honestly I'm sick of watching people moan about things on YouTube. But I went in feeling very optimistic. I did like the first game, and I thought, you know what? The reviews could be completely wrong from some people. You know, the critics almost completely agree it's an amazing game. I'd like to see if I agree with them. So, let's break it down. First off, from a graphical perspective. Like I said, the Last of Us Remastered, being a 2014 remaster, still looks really good. It still looked like a really good game, but I don't think I've seen many graphics in games that were nearly as good, if not better, than Last of Us Part 2. Because it was just gorgeous. The characters looked absolutely amazing. The environments were beautiful. The whole atmosphere they built up, even the color scheming. It was fantastically done. The models are so well detailed and so just visually captivating. And I was only playing on 1080p on my monitor because I had my PS5 plugged in via my Elgato, so I couldn't run it at 1440p. Plus, PS5 doesn't have a 1440p resolution option yet for some reason, which they really need to have because I only have a 1440p monitor. I can't run at 4K. So for a 1080p game, it looked fantastic. It was really, really good. The models, like I said, looked amazing, and the game ran beautifully. The really nice, crisp 60 FPS frame rate, that was good too. I'm really a big fan of the better frame rates in a lot of modern games now. Makes it look much better. But it just looked gorgeous, and it was also backed by a fantastic soundtrack. You know, it's always really important for games, and for just general media, honestly, overall, for film and TV as well, for the soundtrack to really not just fit it, whatever the media is that it's going with, but to also boost it, to put it up on its shoulders and say, you know, this scene wouldn't work without the music, so here's some music that really fits it. And the music, the backing was really good. There were some good pieces there, some really good stuff. I really liked it. Not my favourite video game soundtrack of all time, but it fit the game very well and was really, really well done. And as a little add-on before we get on to the main sections, like I said in The Last of Us 1, the gameplay felt very dated, but in this game, it felt much better. The crafting was a little bit better organised, the skills were much better, having the separate trees you could pick up and upgrade. I really liked that as well, so you could kind of pick things more suited to you. Stealth combat was much more interesting, I think. I don't really think too much changed, it just felt a bit more refined, and it was much more enjoyable for me, making the suppressors and taking characters out. You know, it was stuff that you could pretty much do in the first game, but just not entirely, and it felt more polished, you know? There's not really anything I can point to in particular that makes me go, that makes it far better. Obviously, like I said, the skills are better, but just generally, it feels more refined, and that's a big win for it. A very, very big win. But there are three things I want to talk about in detail with this game, and they're going to be the main chapters of this video. So first off, the characters, then the campaign itself and the chapters within it, and then afterwards the ending, because the ending needs a lot of discussion, I feel like. But let's talk first off about the characters. So again, Ellie for me, complete standout. You know, I absolutely love Ellie's character. I loved her in the first game, and I love that she got far more of a frontline perspective in this second one. Getting to play in her shoes, she's getting older, she's still finding out more about herself. You know, we'd seen her, you know, have the first kind of kiss with a girl in Last of Us Left Behind, which I mentioned this in the 2021 video. I didn't like that nearly as much as everyone else seems to have liked it. It felt very fillery to me. Apart from that kiss with Riley, a lot of it just felt like it was there for the sake of it, so I wasn't really huge on Left Behind. But, you know, obviously she's still, you know, learning more about herself. She's still getting older. She's only, I think, 19 in the current present day for Last of Us Part 2, so she's still getting older and trying to, you know, figure out stuff about herself, blend into Jackson and feel like she's got her home, trying to get used to the truth that she's found out, as we find out retroactively, about that Joel actually did murder all the Fireflies to save her life, because she obviously didn't know that to begin with, but she found it out later. But Ashley Johnson's performance as Ellie is fantastic. She's a really believable, relatable to a lot of extent character for a zombie apocalypse. I really like the way that she's done, and the way she handles a lot of scenes, and the way she kind of just behaves around people and the things that happen with her. I honestly, it's a really, I mean, obviously I'm not watching her and thinking, oh, you know, if someone I know got hurt, I'd go to travel to Seattle and murder hundreds of people, but for relatable from a very human point of view, do you know what I mean? I really liked the way that she was written as a teenager, like kind of coming of age and getting used to her surroundings and trying to respond to trauma in her life. It was really well written. I honestly thoroughly believe that. Joel was interesting in this game to me because even though he dies very early on, I felt like I enjoyed his character more in this game than I did in the last one, because we got to see more of his bond with Ellie as a really strong bond, because a good portion of Last of Us 1 is him being like, I don't want you to be here, I don't want to do this, I want to get rid of you, and while I get it from a thematic standpoint, it's not that interesting to support the characters when they don't really want to be together, or one of them doesn't really want to be with the other one. Seeing them as that bond, going around the museum for her birthday, and just the interactions they had in Jackson and the flashbacks, it made me like Joel a lot more. I really liked his character in that, and it was really gutting to see him die despite knowing it going into it. Still got me. The reaction from Ellie as he dies is just, it's a really strong performance, but just the whole build up to it was really good. But I just really liked him. I just feel like, you know, through the flashbacks, getting to see more moments of the two of them together, seeing the bond, seeing the gaps being filled in, the only thing I wish, I think, is that there'd been one extra flashback scene, or just a bit more of a flesh out, because the gap between Ellie finding out the truth about the Fireflies and what Joel did to the next flashback, it just felt like there was some content missing there, and I would have liked to have seen a bit more of the initial reaction in Jackson of Joel trying to talk to her and her just being like, I don't want to know. I feel like that was a missed opportunity. I would have liked to have seen a bit more there, personally, but I still really like that ending flashback with Ellie saying that I just want to forgive you. I can't yet, but I'd like to. That was still really beautiful scene. That honestly did get me a little bit. That was really well done. But Joel, despite him dying, I think his character was really good. I really do. But following on from those two, the one thing that was a really strong improvement in this game was side characters. You know, there are obviously side characters in the first game. You've got Tess, you've got Bill, you've got Henry and Sam, but none of the characters, I believe, are around long enough to get that invested and to care that much about them. You know, a lot of them are very much one and done. They're there for a little bit and then they're gone. And I don't know about you, but I struggled to get to enjoy a lot of the characters because they weren't there for that long. It just didn't really grab me. But there are a lot of characters in this game that I really, really got used to and really liked. I loved Dina. I loved her relationship with Ellie. I felt like the only kind of slight loss there was that they were flirting a bit when they had the kiss. Then I think they hooked up. I don't know, in the weed underground base. They did some stuff. I don't really know. I don't need to know. But they had their little evening together, whatever it was. And then we kind of almost immediately jumped 3 months later and they're already a couple and they're saying they love each other. I would have liked to have seen that develop a little bit more because it did feel like a bit of a jarring jump. But I really liked Dina and Ellie together. I thought they were a really good pairing. Jesse was a really cool supporting character. He was just a really cool dude and I was sad when he got killed. But also Tommy, we got to see more of him. I really liked him in this, bouncing in between different things and predicting that he was the sniper that was killed, that was shooting at Abby and Manny later in the game. I kind of clocked it quite late on, but I was like, is that Tommy? And it's cool to see them interact and jump in between and get more time with these characters because the game was a lot longer. So that was really good. And even towards the end of it, characters on Abby's side of the thing, like Owen and Mel, I really liked them. And I was sad to you know, retroactively be like, oh, they're dead. I know they're dead, but I'm getting used to them now and I'm quite liking them. And I'm kind of sad that they are dead. You know what I mean? I thought it was really good. And also for Abby's campaign, I loved Lev and Yara. Lev in particular was a really interesting character. A character who was uncomfortable with how they felt in this zombie apocalypse with a group that was very religious and very, you know, bare bones. How would they respond to that? Would they respond well to it? Would they cast them out? It's an interesting topic. I actually think it was handled quite well and it was quite interesting that they hinted at it in the game. They kind of built up towards it and then they explained it. It wasn't ham-fisted, didn't really feel forced, it suited it, and Lev was a very interesting character. I really liked him. I thought he was a cool character in the game. But obviously there's one character I have to talk about a little bit, which is Abby. Now obviously, for a lot of people, Abby is the reason that they don't like this game. There are a lot of people who feel like Abby's inclusion, her killing Joel, is the big break. You know, it's the thing where people really get the whole, I don't like this game anymore, I think it's really stupid. I get that everyone loves Joel. Okay, it makes sense to me, even though I'm not as big a fan of him as everyone else is. From a thematic standpoint, and I think that's what helped about me knowing the key plot points going into these games, because I got to think about them as I was playing, it makes complete sense that Joel, who murders hundreds of fireflies, well maybe not hundreds, but a ton of fireflies in that hospital, to get what he wants in a very, very selfish way that basically dooms the human race to never get a vaccine again. What he's done there is so criminal, you can't really expect him to get away with it forever. It does not make sense. He deserved to have someone catch up to him for that. It just makes logical sense. I think the problem is, this is just me putting myself in other people's shoes, I think the initial issue is that Abby is a character who's just shown up out of nowhere. You've played as for a very short period of time and then kills one of the biggest characters in the game. It does feel unearned. It's that thing of, if it's someone that you've been used to and building up, if it was a villain, for instance, that we saw in the first game, if Marlene had come back and killed him, if she'd survived somehow, it might have made more sense. But Abby, we hadn't seen. However, the game does then make the effort to go back and explain why she did what she did, and I really like that. I think that by the end of it, I genuinely did feel for her and go, you know what, I don't blame you. I get it. I fully understand. But I just think because of the way they did it and making her kill him quite early on, that it turned a lot of people off the game, and I honestly cannot blame you. To everyone who doesn't like the game, I should have said this sooner, I do understand why people don't like it. I fully do. But I just don't have the issues that everyone else has. I do think that Abby was an interesting character. But it's because you don't get to understand some of it until later in the game. By that point, Joel's already been dead. The death has sat with you and you're already starting to form these opinions. It can be too little too late to change your mind, and I fully understand that. But let's move on from that and talk about campaigns. Let's move on to the next section now. To me, what's weird about this game is it is literally about a 24-hour game. You know, it can take a full day to play, if not longer if you're going for collectibles. I mean, I basically played it across 2 full days because I wanted to beat it before it left PS Now. And while I feel like it's a very long game, I do feel for the most part a lot of the content fit. That it deserved to be a game that long. My only issue is, in some parts of the campaign, in particular Abby's, there's just sections that I think are a bit too long. Just a little bit. And it feels like they've padded out the game in certain sections to let you pick up more pills and more parts to modify your guns. And that raises the argument of, well, could you not have increased the drop rates for them and shaved out a few sections? You know, for me, Ellie's campaign was solid almost the whole way through. There were very few pacing issues in that. I really liked it. I've heard some people say that, you know, it didn't pick up until she started to meet the scars. I disagree. I think it was pretty strong from the beginning, watching her get into Seattle and explore the area. The opening segment takes a while, but that's only really if you explore every building. You don't have to do that. You could just jump around and go straight into sections, but if you take the time to explore, it does feel rewarding. I do quite like it. Picking up the collectibles, firing the guns, all that stuff, I do really like. But for me, for Abby's campaign in particular, I think it feels weird finishing Ellie's campaign and getting to that big plot point where Abby has just shot Jesse, and she's about to kill Tommy and Ellie, and then it jumps back and you have to play through all 3 days again as Abby. I think there are definitely parts that could have been made shorter. I don't think the campaign had to be as long as Ellie's. In a way, I'm kind of glad that it was, because it does give you that time to build a bond with Abby and get used to a character if you aren't already turned off the game, as I've said before. And it did work for me. I got very, very used to Abby's character and did really begin to like her. And also that was helped by the fact she was voiced by Laura Bailey, who's one of my favourite voice actresses, so that obviously helped a little bit. Her performance as her was brilliant. Like I said, performances across the board, there were some great performances in this game. I feel like for me, for Abby's campaign, the Lev and Yara stuff with the scars, or the Seraphites, was it? That whole segment was much, much stronger for me. That was the highlight of Abby's campaign. From rescuing Lev and Yara to going back for them. Like, when she went back, I was kind of thinking, where is this campaign going? You know, I kind of got used to the whole Fireflies, the Washington Liberation Front stuff. But then when I saw them move on to the Seraphite stuff, I was like, oh no, this is much better. I love this. And the final set piece with the battle on the island, with everything burning down and all the fighting, that was so good. That was genuinely, that might be my favourite set piece of the entire game. Better than anything in Ellie's campaign. I loved that. But yeah, so just overall, I wonder if Abby's campaign could have been a bit shorter. But I wonder, when you look back at it, are there really segments you could take out? I don't think so. Maybe you could just shorten some things, like maybe get to the building to go across the skyscrapers a bit quicker, or get a bit quicker down the big building. That whole set piece falling down the skyscraper was good, but that's also quite long. So, you know, there's points where they probably could have fixed a bit of the pacing, but overall I felt like a lot of the campaign content felt right. But we can't talk about the campaigns without talking about the ending. So the way that I saw this summed up from a lot of people was people saying, revenge bad. That's the summation of it. Revenge is bad. Don't take revenge, people. It's a bad idea. It's a fair point, okay? There is a lot of, you know, revenge is not a good thing, but the ending for me, I wonder if, it probably sounds really mean to say I feel like it's lost on some people, but because I genuinely feel like, again, I feel like at some point people have just given up with the game and thought, you know what, it's not really for me. But to me, the ending makes total sense. And again, I think it might partially be helped by the fact that I went in knowing that neither of the girls were going to die by the end of it. And it helps me look at it and go, right, well, let's see if we can explain why is that the case. Let's look at it and understand. And the thing that I really noticed is the last fight on the beach. You know, the first fight between them only stops because Ellie is completely incapacitated. Dina nearly dies and Abby walks off. She chooses to be the better person because Lev basically tells her not to. Lev basically says, don't do this. You're better than this. Please don't. Because he doesn't know what Abby did to Joel, so he's able to stop her and she's like, no, I should set a good example. Ellie, if she could have done, probably would have got up and just kicked the living life out of Abby if she'd have been able to, right? So that fight was done because Ellie was gone. That was it. She was down for the count. But the fight on the beach, the way I see it is Abby's character has changed to basically become the next Joel. Like, in me, Abby and Lev to me at the end of that game are Joel and Ellie. They are that same, you know, surrogate parent and child couple that are just there for each other, looking out for each other, they don't care about anybody else, they're just there to make each other safe, and they're the most important people in their lives. And I think to Ellie, especially in that final fight, I think she realised that, you know, Abby didn't want to fight her. That was apparent. She knew that. And if she got towards the end of it, she starts to see Joel and think about the relationship and then went, actually, I can't do this. If I kill Abby, I'm going to continue this cycle of the surrogate parent being killed. And then what happens if Lev comes back for her? You know, what if she robs Lev of his surrogate mother and then he ends up trying to hunt her down? At some point, you've got to break that cycle. And she saw that relationship in them and went, you know what? No, I'm not happy with you, but I didn't get to forgive Joel. She obviously really wishes that she'd been able to forgive Joel. We saw in that flashback, which I said was a brilliant scene, that she couldn't forgive Joel at that point. She wanted to, but she wasn't there yet. And the chance to forgive her was robbed by Abby. Now, while that is enough to say, well, because it was robbed, shouldn't she have killed her? Well, she didn't have the chance to forgive Joel, but does that then mean that that gives Ellie the right to rob Lev of someone who's looking out for him? I wonder. I really, really, really do, you know, because it's clear to Ellie that Joel meant so much to her, despite how she felt about her when he died, or leading up to when he died, that she kind of knew, I think, in her head that she didn't want that to happen to Lev. Whether she knew him or not, she could see the relationship and knew that that was all that Abby cared about, and Abby didn't deserve to die for it. She just didn't. And I honestly understood it. It made a lot of thematic sense to me. And I came out of the game and went, you know what? I'm not surprised. And I don't hate it. Because I kind of thought, going into it, thinking, oh, neither of them are going to die. What's the point? But seeing it, I kind of went, no. It makes sense the way they did it. I really do think it makes sense. And as for Ellie actually going back out there to begin with, leaving the farm to go and hunt Abby down one more time, it does make sense. Like, from a PTSD point of view, it's clear that she couldn't have moved on from what happened. And I get that it's a difficult thing between her and Dina to actually decide that Ellie has to go and Dina doesn't accept it, and I agree with that, but I kind of makes sense that Ellie couldn't just give it up. It does make sense. And then obviously when she does go and ends up changing her mind, that makes sense too. It worked for me. I know it didn't work for a lot of people, but it just made sense to a lot of it really was just clear to me. I don't know. And at the end, it feels like a very sad ending for Ellie, you know, with Dina just not being there by the end of it and Ellie having to go off on her own. But I kind of feel like it's obviously left open-ended. You know, we don't know where Dina went. She probably went back to Jackson, right? She's still in touch with a lot of people in Jackson, I think, from the sounds of it. She probably just moved back there. Who's to say Ellie can't make it back there, explain to Dina what happened, and reconcile? Maybe they move back to the farm at some point, or maybe they just make it work in Jackson. I don't feel like, you know, obviously they could explain it, but this is one of the cases where an open-ended finale actually wasn't too bad. And I'm happy just thinking in my head where it could have gone. Because a lot of times with games, when you leave endings open, you're kind of like, oh, I would have liked to have had some hint as to how it was going to end. And the closest we got was knowing that Abby and Lev made it to the Fireflies base, or the Fireflies area in California, because obviously the main menu changed at the end for the boat to be ashore. So we know they make it there. But we know nothing else beyond that, and I'm quite okay with that. I think that's a good way to end it. I really, really do. The one thing I should mention, though, as we get towards the end of this video, is that I do know and I'm aware of the whole crunch culture allegation thing towards Naughty Dog. People working very, very long hours to make the game, and I don't like that at all. I don't like people were pushed to do extra work that they shouldn't have been doing. Obviously, it doesn't mean you should disrespect the game, because a lot of the workers who were under crunch time are still very proud of what they created, but I don't like that, you know, they did have this pressure of the work. I do think maybe the game could have been delayed another couple of times to make sure it got out and people weren't being put under so much stress. So I do want to acknowledge that I don't like that aspect of it, but you can't argue that the game that did come out of it wasn't fantastic and that the people who worked on it should be very proud of it, because they really, really should. I just wish that maybe they'd been a little bit lighter on the whole pressure thing, because crunch is just, it's never a good thing. It just never is. Right, I've been recording for over 20 minutes. I think that's about everything I've got to say about this game. I don't think I've got much more to add, so I am going to leave it there. I hope that this was interesting to those of you who've played the game, or those of you who liked it and didn't like it. What did you think of Last of Us Part 2, though? Let me know down in the description, in the comment section. Sorry, not in the description. Good luck trying to get anything in there. I would very much like to know what you think of this game. Has my opinion made you rethink the game at all? Do you like it more? Do you like it less after I've talked about it? That might be possible. Let me know. I'd be very interested to see what you all think. I mean, if many people watch this, many people might not watch this because it's not Payday. I like doing these other videos at the minute because it's interesting to see how many people actually watch the videos that aren't Payday themed, because some do better than others. And I basically just stopped caring. If I want to make a video on a certain game, I'm just going to do it, you know, who cares? So that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you all very much for watching. I do greatly appreciate it, and I hope you've enjoyed. Let me know what video you'd like to see next. I think the next one, if I do one, will probably be one on Detroit Become Human. And then after that, I might talk about the Spider-Man games, because I want to do a new game plus for Miles Morales and then keep that fresh in my head. And then I might do a video for both of them at the same time. I haven't really decided, but let me know how you'd like to see that. And let me know what other PlayStation exclusives you'd like to see me talk about. On my list right now, I want to have a look at some Uncharted stuff. I'd like to try Horizon Zero Dawn, maybe God of War. Either way, thank you all for watching. I do appreciate it. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe if you're new to stay up to date with future content. Thank you all very much for watching. I do greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you all next time with a brand new video. Until then, look after yourselves. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.